أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المنتجبين، واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وأناخت برحلك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا، ورحمة الله وبركاته. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. If we see a person physically abusing another person, someone who's innocent, and we see this taking place in a public setting, and we know that other person, the victim, is innocent, do we remain silent? Do we remain as bystanders that do nothing? Or do we rush to speak out and to stop the person, the evil person, the attacker, from attacking the victim? Of course, we're inclined to speaking up, to stopping the evil that we see. We see someone who is being physically harmed. It's part of our nature, and the nature of all human beings, regardless of their color, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their religious backgrounds. This is part of human nature, to speak up, to forbid evil from happening, to stop evil from happening. And even if you couldn't do something physically about it, or you are afraid that harm will come to you and you will be attacked by the same individual who's attacking the innocent person, you at least reject it by your heart. In your heart, you condemn this act, you condemn this action. This is part of human nature. This is accepted by all human beings, to reject evil and to forbid evil from happening if you can, if you have the means, if you have the capability of stopping evil from happening, you would. If you see someone stealing a child in front of your own eyes, stealing a child from their parents, and you can do something about it, physically or verbally, would you remain silent? Of course you wouldn't remain silent. You would speak up. If you could physically stop this kidnapper from kidnapping the child, you would do so. Because you would think, what if this was my own child? What if this happens to my child? Wouldn't I expect the same from others? To stop the kidnapper from kidnapping my child? If you couldn't do something physically, you'd do something about it verbally. You would shout, you would yell, you would call for help. You would call to grab people's attention towards the kidnapper. This is all part of human nature. This is accepted by all reasonable people, from all ethnicities, from all nationalities, from all religious backgrounds. You don't have to be Muslim to accept this. You don't have to be a Christian or a Jew to accept this. People from all religions accept the issue of forbidding evil. Now, we come to Islam, and we come to the teachings of the Quran, and we come to our scholars. All of our scholars believe that ordering the good, al-amr bil-ma'ruf, and forbidding evil is mandatory. It is wajib. In fact, it is these two, ordering the good and forbidding the evil or forbidding the bad, is part of furu' ad-din. It's part of the obligations that we have. It's not less important than praying and fasting and going to Hajj and giving khums and zakat, it's as equally as important as these things. Look at the Quran. الَّذِينَ أَمَّكَّنَّاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Those who we able them on this earth. We give them power. We let them reach power. What do? الَّذِينَ أَمَّكَّنَّاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةِ. They establish salah. They protect salah. أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةِ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةِ. And they give zakat. They have financial obligations just as they have spiritual obligations. وَأَمَرُوا بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَنَهَوْا عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. And they order the good and they forbid the evil. They forbid the bad. You see that al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar is on the same level as establishing salah and giving zakat. But still it is taken lightly. We take it lightly. We don't understand that al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar is wajib, is mandatory. It's just the same as praying our 5 daily prayers. When you see evil taking place, munkar taking place, if you see people sinning and we don't do anything about it and we remain silent and complacent, it's as if we didn't pray. It's as if we didn't fast. It's as equal as to not praying and not fasting. Because al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar is part of furu' ad-din. The Quran emphasizes in many places and in many verses, the Quran emphasizes on al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar and tells us that it is wajib. وَلْتَكُنْ مِنْكُمْ. And let there be وَلْتَكُنْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ. Let there be from amongst you a nation, a group. Ummah doesn't necessarily mean an entire nation, but a group. يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. Let there be amongst you a group that calls people to good. They order people to do good. And they forbid people from doing bad. Some believe from this verse that al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar is wajib kifa'i, meaning that it is mandatory upon everyone. But if a group of us perform al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar, they order good and they forbid the bad, others don't need to perform it any longer. It's like jihad. Jihad is wajib kifa'i. It's not wajib aini. It's not like praying the 5 daily prayers where everyone has to pray the 5 daily prayers. Jihad is mandatory upon all, but if a sufficient group, if a group goes and performs jihad and that group is sufficient, they get rid of evil, they block away evil, then the obligation falls. It is no longer required upon others. Some say that amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy al munkar is also wajib kifai. If some do it, then the obligation, does not remain upon the shoulders of others, but it remains wajib. And we will see an opinion that disagrees, like al-muhaqqaq al-hilli. We will see in a moment. And another verse, Allah Azza wa Jal speaks to us. He says, وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ. This speech is either directed to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, or it's directed to all Muslims, or it's directed to Rasulullah, but Allah wants others to listen to this command. وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا لَا نَسْأَلُكَ رِزْقًا نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكَ وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Order your family to pray. This is part of al-amr bil-ma'ruf. Order your family to pray. You see your children not praying, they're playing with their gadgets, with their iPads, they're playing video games. At the time of salah, order them to pray. Tell them, come and stand with me and pray. And you start from a young age. You don't force them. But you get them in the habit of praying and you encourage them to pray. This is all from al-amr bil-ma'ruf. And another verse, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. O you who believe, protect yourself and your family members from hellfire. How? By ordering your family members to do good. You order them to do good and you forbid them from doing evil. So the Quran, we see time and time again, it teaches us to order good and forbid evil. not to be complacent, not to be indifferent. Being indifferent is not Islamic. You can't be indifferent. You have to speak up. Allah has given us a voice for a reason to speak. You see good not being implemented, order them to implement good. You see evil taking place, we have to forbid evil from taking place. Al-Muhaqqiq Al-Hilli, he says, Al-Amru bil-Ma'ruf wal-Nahyu anil-Munkari wajibani ijma'an. Everyone from all schools of thought, from both schools of thought, agree that in ordering the good, enjoining the good, and forbidding the evil is wajib, is mandatory. وَوُجُوبُهُمَا عَلَى الْكِفَايَةِ. Their obligation is a wajib kifai. What we explained a couple of minutes ago. That if a group of people perform that task, the others don't need to. يَسْقُطُ بِقِيَامِ مَنْ فِيهِ كِفَايَةً وَقِيلَ بَلْ عَلَى الْأَعْيَانِ. And he says there's another opinion that says Al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wal-Nahy anil Munkar is wajib aini. Every person has to perform Al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wal-Nahy anil Munkar. So if my neighbor performs Al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wal-Nahy anil Munkar, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't any longer. It is not mandatory upon me. If my brother or my father, they do it, I'm still obligated to perform Al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wal-Nahy anil Munkar. وَهُوَ لَأَشْبَهُ. And he says the second opinion is more correct. It's the correct opinion. Al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahy al-Munkar is wajib, and we believe that it was not just wajib upon us Muslims, but it was mandatory upon tribes and people and nations before us. For example, the tribe of Thamud, the people of Salih, Prophet Salih, may the peace of Allah be upon him and upon our holy Prophet. When Allah sent them the camel and then the baby camel and told them that one day the camel will drink from the river, the next day you will drink from the river. When the drunk person wanted to kill the camel, it was only one person that killed the camel, but everyone paid the price. Allah Azza wa Jal punished everyone. فَدَمْدَمَ عَلَيْهِمْ رَبُّهُمْ بِذَنْبِهِمْ فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها. The Prophet of Allah told them that this is the camel of Allah. But they rejected and they killed the camel. Allah speaks in plural, while the person who committed the crime was one individual. It should have been singular. فعقرها. But the Quran says, فَعَقَرُوهَا. They all killed. Why? Because they were complacent. They didn't perform Al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wal-Nahy anil Munkar. No one stopped that drunk person and told him, what are you doing? Don't kill the camel. Don't do this. They were indifferent. They were complacent. So the crime is ascribed to all of them and not just the one who committed the crime. Everyone becomes guilty. You see, when we see a crime being committed, evil being committed, and we don't do anything about it, we all become guilty. If you have a friend that was in a session, that was in a gathering, that was at a party, and you were being backbited in that party, there were people making fun of you and mocking you at that party, and your friend was present, and your friend remained silent, would you be happy with your friend? Although your friend was silent, your friend didn't say a word, didn't utter a single word, but you will see your friend just as guilty as everyone else who were mocking you and making fun of you and laughing along with others. Why? Because you were not defended. No one defended you. No one said, you know what, this is not true. Stop backbiting. Stop gossiping. When you're complacent and silent about evil taking place around you, while you have the ability to speak out. Sometimes we don't have the ability. Sometimes we're in danger. Our lives would be in danger, as we will mention. There are conditions to Al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. That's another story. But if you have the ability to speak out and you didn't, then you're just as guilty. We are just as guilty as the person committing the crime. فَعَقَرُوهَا فَدَمْدَمَ عَلَيْهِمْ رَبُّهُمْ بِذَنْبِهِمْ. Allah punishes everyone. We have to learn to speak up, to speak out. You know, if we saw our rights being taken, we'd speak out. If we see someone stealing our car, what do we do? We just sit there indifferently and let the person steal our car? Or someone's trying to break in our house, we just sit there? Of course not. We fight for our rights. We speak out. We defend ourselves. Why is it that when we see people committing sins and violating Allah's rights, violating Allah's laws and commands, we're complacent? Why? What's the difference? Why don't we feel offended when people are committing sins in front of us and we have the ability to speak out, yet we don't? We see people backbiting, sinning, accusing, lying, gossiping, and we sit, we smile, or we don't say anything. We don't tell them to stop, or we don't get up and leave as a sign of, condemnation. We don't do this. It's wajib. Al-amr bil-ma'ruf is wajib. Al-nahi anil munkar is wajib. When we see evil taking place, all kinds of evil. Evil could be corruption, political corruption, financial corruption. Evil could be seeing Muslims drink alcohol in front of us and we don't say anything. We don't advise them. We don't admonish them. This is all breaking the law of al-nahi anil munkar. What is the philosophy, my dear friends? What's the purpose? Why has Allah made al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar mandatory upon all of us? You see, Islam teaches us to feel responsible. Islam tells us that you are all responsible. كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. You are all shepherds and you are all responsible for your flock. Just like a shepherd, when he sees and he has a flock, if he sees one getting lost, and he fears because a wolf can come and eat that sheep, right? You don't let a sheep wander around in the desert because it could get lost. It could be eaten by a wolf. Each one of us is a shepherd. The same way a shepherd looks after his flock or her flock, we human beings, all of us is responsible. We're all shepherds and we consider everyone else as our flock. Of course, we don't mean to say that all human beings are sheep. No. But the same way that a shepherd is responsible, has the sense of responsibility over his flock, we human beings, we Muslims, we have to have a sense of responsibility over other Muslims. At the end of the day, all other Muslims are our brothers and sisters. We're one big family. The same way you care for your family members, your blood relatives, you have to care for others. The same way you wouldn't let your child become ill or go next to someone who's ill, we have to be just as careful with others. So the philosophy, the goal, the objective of al-amr bil-ma'ruf and nahi al-munkar is that we feel responsible, is that we don't let evil spread. We don't let evil spread. If one person doesn't say anything and another person doesn't say anything, evil will spread. Evil will spread. And it will come back to you as well. Imagine if there's a drug dealer in your neighborhood. Would you feel safe? Would you remain silent? Or would you call the authorities? Would you call the police officers? Of course you'd call the police officers. Why? Because today your neighbor's kids will go and buy drugs from the drug dealer. Tomorrow it could be your own kids that will go and buy drugs from the drug dealer. So your sense of responsibility will push you to call the police, to call the authorities and notify them that there's a drug dealer in your neighborhood. There's a drug dealer in your street. There's a drug dealer in your building. Because that evil, if you remain quiet and that parent remains quiet and those parents remain quiet, evil will come to all of you. All evil will come to all of us. And our kids will be drawn towards that drug dealer. That's why innately we speak out. We take action. We're not complacent. We're not indifferent. Imagine if you see someone, I'll give a modern example, a contemporary example. If you see someone who you know 100% carries the coronavirus, is carrying COVID-19, is diagnosed with COVID-19, and you see this person walking in the mall, or walking in a crowded street, or is in a mosque, or at a majlis, if, hypothetically speaking, our mosques were open and our Islamic centers were open, you know someone who definitely has the coronavirus now, not a month or 2 months ago, and is not wearing a mask, is not wearing gloves, is not sanitizing his hand, and he's going around kissing everyone in the mosque. And he's shaking hands with everyone in the mosque. What are you going to do? You're just going to laugh or smile or give a blind eye? Or you're going to do something about it? You're going to notify the authorities at the mosque. You will notify people to be careful, watch out. Of course you're not going to be silent. You're going to do something about it. Why? Because this person who's spreading the virus to others, he could be spreading it to you, or to your elder father, or to your elder mother, or to your children, or to your cousins. It could come back to you. That's the whole philosophy behind al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy al munkar, is that we spread good and we forbid evil, because evil will, just like it goes, it comes back. What goes around comes around. We have to make sure that evil doesn't come back to us. If you see a wildfire starting in a distant neighborhood, you're just going to watch on TV what happens, or you're going to go help and turn off that fire. You're going to take action, because that fire is in a distant neighborhood today, but tomorrow it could be closer to you. It could reach your own neighborhood. So you'd be sure you'll have buckets of water going and helping the other neighborhood that's close by to you and turning off their fire, because that fire could reach you. Evil spreads, my dear friends. Evil could spread. When you see a member in your community, their daughter took off the hijab, and you're complacent with it, you say, what's the big deal? It's not a big deal. It's, we live in a free country. Let her exercise her freedom. I'm not saying go and coerce her in wearing hijab, but the least thing that you could do is that you speak to her gently, kindly. You send her a message, or you pick up the phone and you call her, or you see her at the mosque and you tell her, why have you taken off your hijab? What's the problem? Do you believe that it's not wajib? Well, I'll provide you with evidence that it is wajib, from the Quran, from the Sunnah, from the narrations of Ahlul Bayt. What's stopping you? Is someone harassing you at the workplace, at school? I will help you get rid of the problem. We will notify the authorities. We'll get you a lawyer. You will sue that person, and so on and so forth. Why? When you don't do this, it's one individual that took off her hijab, then they'll become two, then they'll become three, then it's your own daughter, then it would be your wife, then it would be your cousins or your sisters. Evil spreads, my dear friends. Al-munkar spreads. If we are complacent and we don't do anything about it, we remain silent, it spreads, and before you know it, it's too late. Just like the coronavirus. We didn't take the necessary measures in the beginning. We didn't take it seriously. We thought it's just in China. It's in Wuhan, China. It's not going to come to Europe. It's not going to come to America. It's not going to come to the UK. It's not going to come to Birmingham. What happened? We remained silent. We took it easy. We weren't strict about it. Now the entire world is under lockdown. We're in the month of Muharram and there's no majalis. We have to speak virtually to people. Our majalis are empty. Our mosques are empty. Why? Because we didn't take the necessary measures in the beginning. Now it's too late. If you're on a ship and you see two people with an axe trying to sink the ship, what are you going to do? You're just going to watch them sink the ship? Everyone's going to drown, including you. You take action. But why is it that when we see youth in our community take off their hijab, or they don't pray, or they do drugs, or they listen to music, or on a wider scale, we see political corruption, we see our countries waging war against an innocent country like Yemen, for example, or supplying weapons to a country that is destroying Yemen, for example, and we're complacent, we're silent. Well, what goes around comes around. Evil spreads. When we're complacent, evil will come back to us and our communities. We shouldn't be complacent. We shouldn't be indifferent. So here's a question, and that is, how do we forbid the evil and enjoying the good? If I want to implement al-amr bil-ma'ruf wal-nahy 'anil munkar, what is it that I have to do? Do I go knock door to door? Do I have to go around yelling at people, shout at people? Do I, what do I do? The Quran tells us. The Quran tells us how to enjoy the good and forbid the evil. The Quran says, "Id'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan." Call onto the way of your Lord through wisdom. Through wisdom. Be wise. When you order people to do good, don't just tell them pray and fast and give khums and zakat. No. Be wise with them. Give them the proof. Try to be convincing. Tell them what happens when a person doesn't pray. Tell them what happens when a person does drugs. Tell them what happens when a person doesn't give khums. You're saving up money, you don't want to spend money, that's fine. But when there's poor people that you don't spend on, you're a rich person that doesn't spend on the poor, and another person doesn't spend on the poor, and a third and fourth, when rich people don't spend on the poor, that money that they've been saving, it becomes endangered, because the poor ultimately will revolt against the rich and take their wealth. You see? In order to protect your money, we give khums, we give zakat, we give sadaqah. You're actually protecting your money when you give to the poor. Because when the rich forbid the poor from any money and they let them starve to death, well, guess what? People are not going to starve to death. They'll come and attack. They'll attack the rich and they'll break into their homes and they will steal their money. If we explain in a wise way, in scientific ways, why it's good to do good and why it's bad to do bad, through wisdom. Not by shouting, not by threats, not through threats, not by telling them that you'll go to hellfire and this will happen to you. Of course there's hellfire. But wisdom means to convince the other side. To convince them through logic, through wisdom, through proof, through evidence. This is how we perform al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy 'anil munkar. This is one. ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة, and by good admonishment. Good admonishment. You come and tell a lady who doesn't wear hijab, you tell her, listen, Allah is all merciful. What you've done in the past, Allah can forgive, but you can start fresh. You can start fresh with Allah. Wear your hijab. It doesn't matter. You don't owe it to anyone to show your hair and to show your beauty. No one should respect you because of the way you look. They should respect you for who you are, not for the makeup that you put on, not because you wear fashionable clothing, not because of your hair. If people judge you and respect you based on the way that you look, these people, they don't deserve respect. They themselves don't deserve respect. People should respect you for the way you are, for who you are, for what you achieve, for what you do, for what you've accomplished, not the way you dress. Correct? So wear the hijab. Wear the hijab. You don't have to show yourself to satisfy men or to satisfy by good admonishment. Someone who does drugs. You know someone in the community that does drugs. You go to them in private, not in public. You don't expose this person in public. This is part of al-maw'izat al-hasana. Al-maw'izat al-hasana, good admonishment, good advice, is that you go to that person privately and you tell them, listen, what you're doing is you're damaging your health. You're damaging your family. You're ruining your future. You're wasting your money. You're doing this. You're ruining your schoolwork. This could affect your school. This could affect your job. This could affect... And you explain to them with good advice, with good admonishment. You don't come and tell them, listen, if you don't stop today, you're definitely going to hellfire. This is not good. This is not al-maw'izah al-hasana. And finally, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, and debate them in a good way. بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Debate them in a positive way. Not a way that will lead to a fight or to an argument. Someone wants to debate you, say, come, let's debate. You don't believe in God? Let's debate. Bring your proof and I'll bring my proof. Bring your evidence and I'll bring my evidence. but in a positive way. A debate that leads to good results. But if it's a dead end, it's your word against his, and you're reaching a dead end, that's not a good debate. That's not the debate that God wants. That's not the dialogue that Allah Azza wa Jal wants. Right? Al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar, my dear friends, is by ordering the good and forbidding evil, but gently, softly, not being harsh, not being vile, not being aggressive. You know, in some countries, and you'll know what I'm talking about, in some countries, during the time of Salah, you'll see there's a hay'ah, there's an association called the Association of Al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahy Anil Munkar. They go around, close your shop, close your shop. It's the time of Salah. And they force people to close their shops in such an aggressive manner. While the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal orders Musa and Harun to go to Fir'aun, the dictator of his time, who declared to be the God of gods. Not just any God, but the God of gods. اذهبا إلى فرعون إنه طغى فقولا له قولا لينا لعله يتذكر أو يخشى. Go to Fir'aun, for he has been corrupted. He's been corrupted, or he's corrupt. فقولا له قولا لينا. Speak to him gently. Speak to him softly. قولا لينا. Don't go and curse at him. Don't go and shout at him. Don't go and use harsh words and you curse at him. No, that's not al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar. Forbid people from doing evil, but do it gently, do it kindly, do it politely. Let's speak to people kindly. Let's request from them in a kind, polite way. We don't have to be rude. We don't have to be harsh. I see some youth online, and I admire their fervor. I admire their passion for Islam and for the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt. But you don't go around cursing and using vile language and harsh words, and you show aggression towards those who disagree with you, all under the slogan of al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy al munkar, or at-tawalli min awliya Allah wa at-tabarri min a'da Allah. You don't do it in a vile way online, and you cause people to run away from the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt. We believe in at-tawalli min awliya Allah wa at-tabarri min a'da Allah, but there's ways, there's methods, the methods that Ahlul Bayt taught us. This is very important. Let's learn from the Ahlul Bayt. One day, Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein, they were children. They were in the mosque. They saw an elderly gentleman performing wudu in a wrong way. He didn't know how to perform wudu. So they decide to teach him the right way. But how? Look, they told him, "Ya uncle, can you be the judge to see which one of us performs the correct wudu?" He said, "Yes." Imam al-Hassan performed his wudu in the correct fashion. And Imam al-Hussein performed his wudu in the correct fashion. They both performed the correct wudu. He said, "Subhanallah, you both performed the right wudu. It is your uncle that did not perform his wudu in the right way." You see, what a beautiful way of performing al-amr bil-ma'ruf. In such a polite way, they taught the man how to perform wudu, without telling him that you're an embarrassment. You're an old man. You've been praying for how many years? So many years, and you still don't know how to perform wudu. Let's perform al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar. But at the same time, let's not make people run away from faith and religion. It's not about what we say, it's about how you say it. How you call people to Islam. How you order them to do good and forbid them from evil. Look at the Quran. What the Quran says regarding Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You have the greatest of akhlaq, Ya Rasulullah. Rasulullah didn't perform al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar. Didn't Rasulullah teach people about Islam? Yet the Quran says you have the best of manners. فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. It's from the mercy of Allah that you softened for them. You have soft manners, Ya Rasulullah. You have good akhlaq. You have great akhlaq that attract people to Islam. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. But if you were harsh, if you were aggressive, if you had if you were cold-hearted, stone-hearted, no one would have followed you. You wouldn't have a following. Some say, but how do we order the good and forbid the evil while people are free? We live in the West. We live in free countries. In the West, people don't mind their own business. I mind my own business. My neighbor minds his own business. At work, at school, at university, we don't interfere in people's business. How can I go around performing al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar? Some say even Islam, even the Quran. The Quran says, عليكم أنفسكم لا يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم. The Quran says, worry about yourself. If you are guided, then don't worry about others who are misguided. The Quran is telling me to worry about yourself, don't worry about others. And a hadith that says, رحم الله عبدا شغلته عيوبه عن عيوب الناس. May God have mercy on a servant whom he's busy with his own faults and does not worry about the faults of others. So this goes against al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar. I should worry about myself. I should be concerned with myself and not worry about others. No, my dear friends. See, we've misunderstood the point. The Quran, when the Quran says عليكم أنفسكم لا يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم, the Quran is trying to say, don't kill yourself to guide others. You do your job. You try to guide people. Tell them what to do. Order them. Order the good and forbid the evil. Forbid the evil. Do al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar. But if someone doesn't want to listen, that's it. You've done your job. Don't kill yourself. Don't go overboard. This is what the Quran is trying to say. Don't burden yourself more than necessary. Convey the message and that's it. If the other person wants to listen or doesn't want to listen, but you've done your job. And as for the hadith is not saying don't enjoin the good and forbid the evil. No, the hadith is saying don't be obsessed with people's faults. Worry about your faults. And don't obsess over other people's faults. Don't be hypocritical. There are some who have faults, but they don't look at their faults. They look at the faults of others. They obsess about other people's faults and misdoings and wrongs. No. You have faults and other people have faults. But this doesn't mean when you see evil you don't correct it or you don't speak out. But don't obsess about other people's faults. Also recognize your faults. This is what the hadith is saying. Yes, there is freedom of speech. We live in countries, there's freedom, but this doesn't mean that we shouldn't speak out. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't speak out. We see something wrong, speak out. In fact, freedom of speech emphasizes this. It doesn't conflict. Freedom doesn't conflict with al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar. It is because of freedom of speech that we can, when we see evil, we should forbid it. At least we should speak out. So there's no contradiction whatsoever. Now, al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar has certain conditions. From a fiqhi viewpoint, it has certain conditions. What are those conditions? Al-Muhaqqiq al-Hilli and al-Shara'i', he mentions 4 conditions. Number 1, that al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar should be effective. I should know that it is effective. If I know that speaking out will be effective, then al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar is wajib, mandatory. But if I know that it's not effective, for example, I sit with a taxi driver and the taxi driver has music on. I know that if I tell him to lower the music, he's going to do the opposite. He's going to do the opposite. He's going to ridicule me. He's not going to listen to me. He's not going to take me seriously. It's going to have an opposite reaction. Then here, al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar is not wajib. Why? Because I know it's ineffective. I know it's not going to have an effect. If you know that it's not effective, then it's not wajib. This is 1. 2, the other condition for al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar is that the person committing the evil should know this is evil, should know that this is wrong. or should know that they're not doing good, they're not performing justice. But if they're ignorant, if they don't even know that this is haram, they don't know this is munkar, then is it wajib to do nahi anil munkar, to forbid them from evil, if they don't even know that this is evil? If someone doesn't know that music is haram, they don't know, they think it's halal, do I have to come and tell them this is haram and this is munkar and I forbid them from evil? Not necessarily, because they don't even know this is evil. There's another discussion in fiqh, and that is, do we have to let people know of the ahkam? Do we have to teach people ahkam? That's another issue. That's another issue of educating people, teaching them. But I'm talking about forbidding evil. If the person doesn't even know this is evil, if this person doesn't know this is munkar, am I obligated to stop him or her? According to Al-Muhaqqiq Al-Hilli and many scholars, they say no. The person has to know this is munkar in order for you to forbid him. Number 3, the person who is committing munkar has to insist upon it. مُصَرًّا عَلَى الْمُنْكَرِ. Then we forbid him. But if he's not insisting, then it is not wajib. For example, if you see someone gossip or backbite against someone, and then he changes the subject or she changes the subject and goes on to another subject, khalas, that munkar is gone. But if you see this person backbiting once, twice, 3 times, he's either or she's either talking about the same person or about another person. They're insisting upon the crime. They're insisting upon the sin. They're insisting upon the munkar. Here you have to speak up. You have to do something about it. You have to say what you're doing is wrong. This is a mistake. This is munkar. And number 4, among the conditions of al-nahi anil munkar wal-amr bil ma'ruf, that it doesn't bring you harm. If you know that if you speak up, you'll get hurt, you'll get damaged, you'll lose your job, your wealth will be taken away, or a relative, a family member will be hurt, then here al-nahi anil munkar and al-amr bil ma'ruf. Al-amr bil ma'ruf is not an obligation. Another question is, how far do we go with al-amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar? Verbally I speak out, but does it come to physical forbidding of evil? Can we use force? Can we use our hands to forbid evil? If I see a Muslim lady that doesn't wear hijab, can I force her? Can I coerce her to wear hijab? If I see someone who's breaking his fast in the middle of the day during Ramadan, can I physically stop this person from breaking his fast and from eating or not? The use of force in al-amr bil ma'ruf and nahi al-munkar, there's a debate among scholars. Some scholars like Al-Muhaqqiq Al-Hilli and Al-Shara'i, he says the steps of al-nahi al-munkar is 3. 1, by the heart. You reject al-munkar in your heart. Meaning you show facial expressions that you're upset. You get up from a majlis, you frown. You don't say anything, but you show it in your heart. You show it on your face that you're upset. So if the first step of al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahi al-munkar didn't work, we move to the second step. The first is rejection by heart. The second is rejection by verbally speaking out. The third is by using the hands. This is what many scholars have mentioned, like Al-Muhaqqiq Al-Hilli, Al-Shaykh Tusi, and others. So the 3 steps of al-amr bil ma'ruf and nahi al-munkar is by the heart, rejection by the heart, rejection by the tongue, rejection by the hands. And some say that if al-nahi anil munkar requires physical force, then it is permissible. However, there's another opinion that by Shaykh Tusi. He explains that al-nahyu anil munkar by the hands, by using the hand to forbid evil, it doesn't mean that we physically coerce people. It rather means that we implement forbidding the evil. We don't perform evil ourselves, and we do good ourselves. That is physical al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy al munkar. We practice good and we abstain from bad, that is the physical essence of al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar. There's another opinion that says al-nahyu al-munkar by the hands, forbidding evil physically. It doesn't mean going around physically coercing people. You see someone breaking their fast, you take the food away from them, or you beat them, or someone who's not wearing hijab, you physically coerce her. No, it means that if there is evil, you get rid of that evil. Like what? There's weapons of mass destruction, you get rid of those weapons. There's drugs, you get rid of the drugs in your community. There's alcohol, you get rid of the alcohol in your community. There is any substance of evil, you get rid of it. Physically, you get rid of it. Some say this is what it means. However, there's a middle ground, and that is to say al-amr bil-ma'ruf and nahy al-munkar has various levels. How? There are some kinds of evil where it is enough for you to speak out. For example, with hijab, you tell the women in the community, if there's any woman that don't wear hijab, you tell them to practice hijab. And there's sometimes it needs physical interference. You have to physically interfere to stop the harm and stop the evil. For example, you see an elderly gentleman being beat up by a mob or by another individual. You have to, speaking out verbally might not be enough. You have to physically interfere to stop the evil from taking place. Just like Prophet Musa alayhi salam, when a Coptic was attacking an Israelite in Egypt, and the Israelite called him, asked him for help. He interfered and he helped the Israeli against the Coptic. So sometimes it requires physical interference to forbid the evil. Al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar. What an important value, what an important principle that is forgotten, that is no longer implemented in society and community, unfortunately. Al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar is so valuable that sometimes it requires to sacrifice a life. Sometimes sacrifice your own life for the sake of al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar. Imam Hossein alayhi salam, his goal on the day of Ashura and in Karbala was al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar, even if it required a major sacrifice. And that is what he did. He declared that my intention of going to, rising, of going to Kufa, initially the plan was to go to Kufa and then it diverted to Karbala, was الأمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر. إني لم أخرج أشرا ولم أخرج بطرا، لم أخرج أشرا ولا بطرا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما، وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي أريد أن آمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر. I've risen to enjoin the good and forbid the evil. I see evil in front of me. I see a person who is not worthy of sitting on the mimbar of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. Yet see, he sits on his mimbar and he declares to be the representative of Rasulullah, the representative of Allah on earth. Imam Hussein alayhi salam had to speak up. When no one else was willing to speak up, Imam Hussein spoke up and rose for al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. He comes to the shrine of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. He wants to say his farewell. He decided to leave Medina after he was asked for allegiance to Yazid by Al-Walid, the governor of Medina. That night when the governor of Medina calls Imam Hussein and asks him for allegiance, and Imam Hussein was angered, and he says angrily, إِنَّا أَهْلُ بَيْتِ النُّبُوَّةِ وَمَوْضَعَ الرَّسَالَةِ بِنَا فَتَحَ اللَّهُ وَبِنَا يَخْتِمُ. We are the household of Rasulullah. Allah began with us and He shall end with us. And who is Yazid? Yazid, رَجُلٌ فَاسِقٌ فَاجِرٌ. Yazid is corrupt. Yazid is a criminal, is a sinful individual. شارب للخمور قاتل للنفس المحترمة أو النفس المحرمة. He drinks, he's an alcoholic, he's a murderer. وَمِثْلِي لَا يُبَايِعُ مِثْلَهُ. Someone like me will not give allegiance to someone like Yazid. Imam Hussein alayhi salam goes to the Prophet's mosque to say his farewell to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to his mother Fatima. He goes next to the grave of Imam Hussein, next to the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he says his farewell. He says, "Look, Ya Rasulullah, look at your ummah. Look how they are treating your grandson. I wish to be with you, Ya Rasulullah. I wish to be with my mother and my father." Imam Hussein alayhi salam sleeps next to the grave of his grandfather. He sees Rasulullah in his dream with angels surrounding him on his right, on his left, in front of him and behind him. Habibi ya Hussein, inna laka darajatan fil jannah la tanaluha illa bil shahada. My dear grandson Imam Hussein, my dear grandson Hussein, you have a position waiting for you in Jannah, in heaven. You could only acquire that position through martyrdom. فَالْعَجَلْ الْعَجَلْ. Your father waits for you, your mother waits for you, your brother Al-Hassan waits for you. Come to us. Imam Hussein alayhi salam wakes up, and then the next day he leaves towards Mecca to perform Hajj. This was the exiting of Medina, and then there was an entrance to Medina. When a Sayyidah Zainab salamullahi alayha and Imam Zain al-Abidin, they come back to Medina. The same caravan that left, they come back, but this time there's no men. There's no youth. Imam Hussein is not there. Abu al-Fadl Abbas is not there. Al-Qasim, Ali al-Akbar, Aoun and Muhammad. None of them are there. None of the youth, none of their bright stars are there. Bishr ibn Hadlam comes and recites poetry. Ya ahla Yathrib la muqama lakum biha. He wants the people of Medina to come and greet Imam Zain al-Abidin. Oh, the people of Yathrib, you have no position to stay here any longer. Why? قتل الحسين فأدمعي مدرار. Hussein has been killed, so my tears stream for him. الرأس منه مضرج في كربلاء. الجسم منه مضرج في كربلاء. His body is swimming in a pool of blood in Karbala. والرأس منه على القنا يدار. And as for his head, it is on a spear, flowing from one city to another, from Karbala to Kufa, from Kufa to Damascus, from Damascus back to Karbala, and then again back to Medina. It's as if I could see a Sayyidah Zainab salamullahi alayha. She's come back to her house. She's come back to her home. Her husband, Abdullah ibn Ja'far, when he saw her, he said, "Who is this? Who is this in front of me?" She told him, you're right. I don't blame you for not recognizing me. This is Zainab. I am Zainab bint Ali. I am your wife that you couldn't recognize. You couldn't recognize. And how would you recognize you? How would you recognize me after all the tragedies that have befallen on my heart? لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العلي الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته، ولا هما إلا فرجته، ولا عيبا إلا سترته، ولا خوفا إلا آمنته، ولا رزقا إلا بسطته، ولا شملا إلا جمعته، ولا مرضا إلا شفيته، ولا غائبا إلا حفظته وأدنيته، ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها ويسرتها يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.